On tonight's episode, UConn's going to cover how the Broncos have moved on from sugar cubes to cupcakes.
That's me.
Me, I'm probably gonna need some therapy after this one. Uh, Psylocke, happy Black Monday.
Yes, it is. Howdy, howdy.
We've got a special guest with Finn, who's going to be covering things about the pin and answering an important question for us.
Hello, I'm excited to be here.
Yes, it's going to be fun. Anyway, welcome to Jersey Tales, a sports themed podcast from the mascot's perspective, sort of. Hey, yeah, so welcome everybody to the Jersey Tales. So, with that all out of the way, I do, before we get started here, welcome Finn, our guest. I assume that you had a wonderful time in our green room earlier. Yeah, had everything that you needed.
Yeah, the snacks were great. The water was good. The coffee was a little weak, but we can work on that. But
Yeah,
I'm ready to go.
good. You get the right flavor M&Ms, like because
Uh,
that's a thing.
Not this time, but
Oh, we'll do better.
I'll put that in the feedback form after this.
Sam, you're fired. Oh, good, good, good. Also, for those of you that are tuning in, our Blue Sky is now active as well. So the Jersey Tales on Blue Sky. So be sure to check us out over there. Not only will we be posting episodes when they go live on there, but we will do our best to interact with you. So if you want a place to interact with us or share things that you wish for us to cover, that's a great place to do it. So, UConn, why don't you just tell us about the Broncos?
Well, first of all, I think it's funny that the Jets actually did what they had to do for
No,
you,
that's
Red.
I'm covering that later.
No,
You need to
yeah,
be
yeah.
excited
No,
just about making
I
it.
just think it's funny to point it out. The Jets actually won the game, but yeah, I'll let you talk about that later. No, I mean, yeah, we kind of talked about last week the expectation that Casey would probably sit some people. Of course, they did sit everyone, and I expected the Broncos to win when Casey did sit everyone. I, honestly didn't expect 38-0. Quite the win and quite the showing from Bo Nix. The team kind of did what they had to do, or not what they had to do. Well, yes, what they had to do, but what they should have done the last 2 weeks to win one of those other games, right? I mean, Bo was nearly perfect. I mean, 26 for 29, 321 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, you can't really ask for a much better stat line than that. Almost perfect, right? And I know he broke an NFL record for, I think, touchdown passes at home by a rookie, which is kind of a cherry pick stat. But it was he did end the season there second in total passing TDs by a rookie at 29. I think Herbert had like 30, 31 when he his rookie year. So Bo finished second in that all time, which is pretty crazy. I mean, I think that's pretty awesome. I think he turned out to be better than really anyone expected him to. I mean, he didn't have a perfect season. There were some games that had some more picks and stuff like that than he should have had. But I think Bo really turned out to be pretty great for his rookie year, and I'm definitely excited for what that means for the future more than anything, right? But it was a great game from him. Go
I
ahead.
see in your I see in your future playing in the playoffs, which I figured that's what you'd be excited about, not just like, oh,
Well, I mean, I'll get to that. I'm about to get into that. Don't worry. But no, yeah, I mean, I'm just optimistic for the future from what we've seen from Bo, and it tempts me to buy a Knicks jersey. I don't know if I will, but it tempts me to buy one. But yeah, no, great game from the Broncos. Great game from the offense. Really, that they had that one double tipped touchdown, which was wild. That was pretty funny. Also, awesome. Another pretty good year for Cortland Sutton. He's We know, for several years now here, or since he really joined the NFL, he's been a great receiver. But he had another 1,000-yard season here. So awesome year for Cortland too. Super proud of him. But yeah, now moving on to what that means for the playoffs. So, of course, the Broncos are in the playoffs and they get to play the Bills. I really don't expect them to win that game, especially because the Bills really are my AFC favorite. I don't expect the Broncos to beat them at all. I mean, I don't know if that'd be cool if they did. I guess it'd be cool. I would then be worried because I don't think anyone else could beat the Chiefs other than the Bills. So I don't know about that, but no, I don't expect them to win next game there against the Bills. But I don't think I kind of like I said, my optimism for the future is high. I don't think there are any like moral victories in sports, as we all say, but it was definitely a more successful season than we expected, and I am super optimistic for the future next year and such. Hopefully, we can kind of fill in the gaps a little bit because I think the Broncos are very close to being a contender. Not like AFC greatest team ever, but they're very close to being a solid like playoff contender every year. Not every year, but you know what I mean, next year or whatever. Rather than just kind of sneaking in here, even though, like I said, they should have gotten in a couple of weeks ago, really. But still, just super awesome, and I'm excited.
So what do you think was the big
Brad?
change? Do you think the biggest change for the Broncos has just been Bo Nix?
Well,
Or do you think like Sean's got a chance to like get his system in place and he just wasn't working with Russ well?
Yeah, and I'm definitely one of those I'm one of those Broncos fans that doesn't place all of last year's problems on Russ. I think it was really the combination between Russ and Sean where the play calling from Sean was bad or it didn't fit with what Russ needed to do. And then a few times when like Russ was allowed to do what he wanted to do, then he kind of broke out a little bit and stopped throwing silly checkdowns for 2 yards or whatever. So I this year the big changes, I think there's less butting heads between the quarterback and the coach. As we saw earlier in this year, right, the Broncos really improved throughout the year, especially midway through the season, where early on we saw a lot of the same issues and they lost some of those games, and you saw some of the same exact headaches and like miscommunications, if you will, between quarterback and coach there early on. And then I think really as the season moved on, those two kind of figured out how to play. Nick's certainly took on more of a leadership role, I think, as the season went on. He showed he showed that he was in charge more and more, if you will. And so I think that was the change, especially during not only from last year but throughout the season too, was that Sean Payton kind of figured out a little bit better how to coach these guys. I still think he has a few issues with coaching. Like we saw a few of these even more recent games, still has stupid issues with time management, like at the end of halves and at the end of games, that almost probably cost us a couple of them. So I still am not 100% on board with Sean Payton because I think he still is making some dumb decisions, but I think it was certainly improved this year from that perspective.
Maybe he's just rusty from being in the booth all those years.
Yeah.
It took Gruden a little bit to get back into the swing of things until, he got canned.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you also, I think we talked about it a little bit last week, but Sean, of course, came from having most of his time with the Saints was with an incredible quarterback who kind of could just run things as it was, or as he wanted to, rather. And then now it's a little bit different situation here. But anyways, I'm definitely happy with how they looked to improve from a relationship perspective during this year. I hope Sean will make less dumb decisions next year, but
I guess last question before I segue into, I guess, my segment. So how does it make you feel that one of the worst defenses in the league was able to shut Bo Nix down when he played against the Bengals?
What answer do you want? I mean,
I mean, like you were talking like, well, he's doing all the things. Is it like,
Well,
what is
yeah,
it?
but he didn't. Yeah, but I mean, we talked about it last week. Is like he did at the end of regulation and had his magic to tie the game, and then was terrible in overtime. I mean, and then this game he played perfect. I mean, yeah, he was playing not necessarily against the top talent, but
I'm pretty sure the Chiefs just like pulled fans out of the out of the
oh,
stands. It
sure.
was just like, get out there, you guys! You just want a chance to play football for us. That's great. It's like I don't even think they risked
Sure.
their like third string quarter. I don't even think they'd risk the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously, well, and that's tough because it's like you can say Nick's had a great game, but he also is not playing against top talent. So, I mean, I think it was great. I'm glad it was. I mean, I think he had he was at. I think he was at like 17 passes, 17 of 17 or 18 of 18 before he finally threw an incompletion, which is pretty awesome. So that was great. He just definitely was on it yesterday. I wish he was on it in overtime last week, and then it wouldn't have mattered. But I don't know.
I mean, I'm glad he wasn't.
Yeah, well, then it doesn't matter now. Go on,
No.
talk about what you want.
So down the peg, because like we got everything we needed except for one loss from Denver. Like, and
Yeah, it is wild how much went in your favor. The fact that the Jets actually won the game.
yeah, I know everything. Like everything came down to just Denver. You needed to lose. Now, granted, I'd already said that I needed the Steelers to beat the Chiefs so that they would not rest against Denver. And unfortunately, like every other time I've counted on another AFC North team to do what I needed them to do, they didn't because they knew it would help the Bengals.
Well, I do wonder. Sorry, quick thing is I do wonder. Not that I wish they did, because I'm glad they did. I'm glad they did sit everybody, and we didn't have to play everybody or all their top guys. But earlier in the year, the Broncos nearly beat the Chiefs. Now, a lot of teams nearly beat the Chiefs, but with Bo playing like he did yesterday, I wonder if what the result would have been like if it was actually the Chiefs starters.
I mean, even when we were bad, we almost beat the Chiefs.
I mean, the entire league almost beat the Chiefs this year. So
If only there was just. You would have thought by the amount of yellow flags that were flying that they were the Steelers, with the terrible towel. But turns out no, that's just the officiating. Yeah, it is a thing. But that all being said, everything but that went in our favor, and I think that hurts the most. Now, granted, if we would have made the defensive adjustments that we had made after the Pittsburgh game, before the Pittsburgh game, it wouldn't have freaking mattered because we hung like 38 on them, but we still lost. So, I mean, it is what it is. Now, while I'm devastated that we're not in there, and that I know for the fact that the Chiefs did not want the Bengals in the playoffs because Mahomes is scared of Burrow. I mean, it's well documented. The silver lining, I guess, to all of it is they finally fired Frank, and it's been something that all of the Bengals fans have been wanting for years. Now Zach ended up firing a lot more than just Frank. He fired Lou as well, which Lou had some faults. I wasn't quite ready to part ways with Lou, but I understand him doing so. And the hesitation on that end. I mean, we had a lot of really young talent that we did not play at all until, well, we started kicking butt. I mean, there were guys that did not get any snaps at all because Lou was favoring injured guys over these young and up and coming studs. So that's been a problem. But the thing with Lou is he's like, if you're Josh Allen or you're Patrick Mahomes, Lou has a scheme designed specifically for you, and it works. Even when he's bad, it works. I mean, this year we held Mahomes to like 17 points, I think is what it was. Like it was nuts. And then last year against Buffalo, where we just not last year, the year before last, where we just completely shut them down. he was able to scheme and contain Josh Allen. I mean, that's where his stuff is really good. But then you throw him up against somebody he's never seen before, he will not make adjustments. He does not have an alternative game plan. He will not deviate from the game plan. And he just kind of hopes that eventually it will wear them down. And it sucks to see Lou go because he got us to a Super Bowl because it definitely wasn't our O-line coach. Bye, Frank. But I'm sure he'll find a home somewhere that will at least get him. I mean, if he's got elite talent, that's going to be the hardest defensive team to beat in the country. If you're giving him a bunch of questionable recruits or people off the street, it's going to be kind of middling because he really needs to build around at least a couple of elite pieces in order to have his defense work. So, but hey, Frank's gone, so maybe we'll actually have some good O-line development and Burrow will stop getting hurt. Maybe.
Oh yeah, no, maybe, but I think for this offseason, the Bengals need to strictly focus on improving their defense. They need to first and foremost get a competent defensive coordinator to come in and make the necessary changes. They can't go into 25, 26, running the exact same style of play they did this year, where it's like, well, they'll have Joe Burrow run the entire offense and there's no defense to, help them out. Like, you're not going to win games that way. They'll just be in the same position that they are this season, where Burrow's putting up godly numbers, but they're 8-9, 9-8, and they're not making the playoffs.
Yeah, he's won the Triple Crown.
Okay, but are they in the playoffs though?
No, I know. I mean, I understand that part. I mean, the part that's crazy to me is. Sorry, I had to check something. The part that's crazy to me is that I have a feeling that even if we get a good defensive back, if Joe isn't playing like he can't rely on the defense, we're still going to lose games because of that. So I want them to keep this fire, and I want him just to keep playing at this level. But then also I want a defense to at least get some stops. And I do like who I'm thinking of, which I kind of teased on the Blue Sky when I had control of it, is Al Golden. So he's got history with us. He was a linebacker coach for us. Zach likes him. Apparently they have a pretty good relationship, and he got Notre Dame looking pretty good defensively.
Wait,
so
are you talking about University of Miami, Florida head coach Al Golden, the same Al Golden who is also the head coach of Temple football?
All right. So again, it's like Bobby Petrino. You want Bobby Petrino to run your offense. You don't want him to be your head coach and face of the program, because he's gonna show up in a neck brace at some point.
My gosh, that is funny.
Mean, yeah, but
need I bring up his illustrious stats at Miami and Temple?
No,
I don't want to bore the audience, but
I understand. But like, he wasn't just the DC. I mean, honestly, I think that he'd be a decent DC for us.
I listen. I'm more aware of his stints at, like I said, Miami and Temple. I'm not aware of his stops at Notre Dame and.
Well, he's in it there right
Penn
now.
State. Okay.
So that's what we just witnessed last week.
Yes, we did. But
against the SEC.
Oh boy, that is fun times in the SEC.
That's a spicy burrito. Yeah, that's a spicy burrito for a little bit. but like, I mean, I that name came out, and like, of course, I'm going to use the we aren't a real like news channel, so we're not going to like sources say. No, it's going to be some random drunk guy on Reddit said. But then I read it, and it was like, that's not a bad idea.
Right.
So now I'm going to speak it into existence. That's how that works, I mean, but like, we at least admit it. I mean, that's the way that the rest of the sports media works, is that they just you know what? That's not a bad idea. We're going to talk it up. Sources say blah, 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 blah. And instead, we're like, no, look, I saw a drunk comment on Reddit, and I thought it was brilliant, so I'm going to run with it.
Yeah, no, like I said, and we've had this discussion before. They need to seriously switch up what they're doing because, and I know you've pushed back on what I've said, but the clock is ticking in Cincinnati. Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, they're not getting any younger, and at a certain time, that window's going to close.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that the AFC North might be the best division in football, pound for pound, and I'll die on that hill. So you already have 3 of the teams that are, already competitive, and the Bengals can't afford to, have a misstep again this, next season. So they need to really figure out, what the issues are on the defense and correct that, because Burrow
that's what they did.
can't.
They fired the defensive coordinator, right? So.
Oh, okay, but that doesn't. You can fire a defensive coordinator. That doesn't mean things are going to change overnight. We're talking about personnel changes. We're talking about, different coaching staffs coming in. It's not just, let's just fire our DC. That everything will be better. No, things have to happen because of that. And like I said, if things don't change and we're back a year later having the same discussion, that window's going to be shut. The AFC is only getting stronger. Like, you're wasting Burrow's prime on 8-9, 9-8 seasons. Like, that's not going to cut it.
The Steelers had a down year. Like, I mean, that would have been a prime opportunity for us to come in there and take it over. But okay, so I get what you're saying, but the reason why I keep bringing up the firing of the DC is the one thing that you haven't noticed is what the front office is actually doing. So we had 3 options in front of us, basically, which was clean house under Taylor, but keep Taylor, fire Taylor, and just all new staff, or deal with the other side of the coin, which is the general manager, because there's the complaints that you're getting where either A, he's terrible at picking talent, or B, he's picking great talent and our guys are just terrible at developing it. So those were the 2 options in front of the ownership, and the ownership took you're bad at developing talent, clean house, get in some new blood that can actually develop all this talent we're bringing in as cover for the GM and his recruiting. Now, he's had some wins. He's had some stinkers. But then again, like, if they're not developing them, maybe that's why they're stinkers. So, like, that's the direction that the organization's going. If this next group comes in, especially if they're well known for developing talent, that's going to be hopefully something that the ownership sits in and goes, you know what? Maybe it's time for a new GM, which I really don't think they'll do it. They'll let him retire because, like, he's just one of those guys that's just been there forever. But
go on his own terms. Yeah.
But it's weird because, like, I'm trying to explain, like, what we're seeing here. This is they like what Zach was doing on the offense. So, which, I mean, I'm with the ownership on that. I think that as long as he plays like his pants are on fire, or calls plays like his pants are on fire, that we are unbeatable on the offense side of the ball. The defense, we needed something. Now, whether that was they let some talent go, we got to get better at developing talent. That's just kind of how it is. So we'll see. But apparently, Burrow, T, and Higgins have all got together and are working together with Zach, apparently, to try and come up with a way for all 3 of them to stay together.
That's a lot of hometown discounts. And usually, specifically in the NFL, athletes don't really do that. They want to chase the bag. The only one that comes to mind is Brady, but people conveniently forget he was married to a supermodel who made more money than he did. So he had the luxury to take a pay cut. Generally, most NFL players are not going to be that selfless and say, yeah, I'll take a pay cut if it means keeping a core together. Now, maybe these guys are going to do that. It remains to be seen. I would say that I think Burrow is good enough to elevate any wide receiver. I think he's that talented, and only a few quarterbacks can do that. But I think he's talented enough to where he could elevate, Yoshi Vosh, who I really like. He's one of my favorite, under
He's
the radar
smart.
players.
Yeah,
I really
he's a
like him.
smart player.
I think he's talented enough to elevate him to a number 2 position, a number 2 wide receiver. I really think
Probably.
that. I don't
But
think the Bengals need to keep T. Higgins. I think they'd be all right losing T. Higgins, honestly, and putting that money elsewhere.
well, we would like to keep him. Plus, with the amount of injuries and stuff that happened this year, T is going to be on a big discount, which is good because, as I alluded to earlier, Chase won the freaking Triple Crown, so now he's going to be astronomically expensive. So they may all work out together a deal, and Burrow might restructure his contract similar to how Patrick Mahomes is structured. Because like a big portion of Patrick Mahomes' stuff gets kicked way down the road. So like when he's done,
Yeah.
then there's going to be a big cap hit. Like he's on like a rolling like 2-year contract or something crazy that they update every couple of years that leaves all of this extra money available for the offensive weapons around him. And since we've already got that big old massive cap space that's dedicated to Burrow, that is 100% something that we could easily do. And then if T's coming in at this, because T's even said he's going to take a discount. Like he's decided he's not worth wide receiver 1 money, and that he wants to stay and he wants to keep playing with his 2 bros, which is the coolest thing that I've heard. Come out because like normally like with somebody like with T's talent, because if you watch T, I mean yes, Burrow can make Yoshi be productive. Okay.
Yeah.
But like
No, you can.
T is a freaking wizard when he's healthy. And he always gets those extra couple of yards when you need. And the other big thing with T is that he makes Chase more dangerous because you can't double team Chase because then T's going to have a field day. So, which is that's what happens whenever T has a big game. What happened? Oh, they double team Chase. Okay. Well, now that they've got split coverage, Chase is going to have his big day. So, it is what it is.
Right.
So,
And
that being said, I don't know if they'll get everything worked out, but like it's smelling like they're trying really hard. I mean, because again, T and Chase have the same agent now. So,
right. And just one last thing, and I was going to touch on this more when I discussed Black Monday with coaches. One of the organizations that I thought would make a larger splash in moving on was the Bengals. I had thought Mike Brown would have fired Zach Taylor, despite everything that has happened this season. Do you think how do you feel about that? How do you feel about Zach Taylor coming back for one more year? Do you think that that's the right call?
Yeah.
Or
okay. No, because offensively, like again, his side of the ball that he understands is good. He just needs defense and he needs a little bit of help from the front office. And now Zach's made some mistakes. I mean, when I was there at the Denver game, like literally everyone around me turned around and laughed when I said, "Oh, look, Zach's going to do the Zach thing and run it up the middle because we're in overtime." And guess what he did? He ran it up in the middle because we're in overtime, so he could. And again, it wasn't even like we had McPherson. They still doinked the freaking kick. But we got bailed out there, and so then all of a sudden, bygones be bygones because we won the game. But he needs to stay for at least one more year, maybe 2. And the thing is that I think he needs to stay for 1 to 2 years. Now, Mike Brown, he's going to keep him for another 5 or 6. I mean, look how long he kept Marvin Lewis around.
Don't have to remind me. That was such a head-scratching decision. He kept him around for a very long time when it was clear that Marvin was not the answer at Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So it just seemed to me watching, the games that I did, especially down the stretch, that Zach coached better when his job was on the line. It seemed like he knew the rent was due, and that's why he was coaching so well.
I mean, that's what Lou did too. I
And
mean, and the thing is
I
where
mean,
was this earlier?
but see, that's a problem though. Like your head coach shouldn't coach their best when their job is on the line. Like that's concerning. Like that tells me that there's something there that's not really clicking all the way. And it's not until their backs are against the wall that they suddenly remember how to, call X's and O's. That's just what I'm saying. I find that very problematic with Zach Taylor. And to me, anyway, as an outside observer, it seems more like that team went to the Super Bowl in spite of him there, not because of him. And I don't know if he's the coach to elevate the Bengals to get them back to a Super Bowl. I don't know that yet.
No, and I don't know. But the thing is if he's got the other two pieces in play, you can just keep winning with. And it does. The head coach is just there to hopefully not worry about anything else but managing the stupid clock and his timeouts. Or chip in and help him buy some new helmet mics, because the number of timeouts we've wasted because Burrow's stupid headset doesn't work is getting a little annoying. I mean, I thought we were going to lose to the Steelers because of that. I mean, we had one timeout left going into halfway through the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a possibility that it was going to be a tie game. It's like, well, we don't have any timeouts left, and because we had to blow two of them early in the second half, because the headset stopped working again. Now I don't know. Maybe it's because the NFL headset things and they're easy to jam. And there's a bunch of Carnegie Mellon students that are sitting over there snickering with the, a TIE 3 calculator hooked up to a giant Pringles can with a coat hanger through it or something. But it's been a problem where the number of timeouts that we've lost because that stupid headset isn't working, that has probably cost us a game or two at this point this year. So maybe we need to fire that guy too. I don't know.
Yes, fire everybody. Start over.
Yeah. Speaking of firing everybody, happy Black Friday. Monday.
Black Friday.
Black Monday.
Whoa.
Black Monday.
I wish it was Black Friday again. Get all those 20% off deals that we got the rest, the year anyway.
You mean the same price that, they just stick a sticker on it and they mark it? Yeah. The Kohl's special.
Yeah. Oh, that was awful. But no, it is Black Monday. So for those who are not aware, Black Monday is the annual tradition in the NFL where coaches, GMs, coordinators are usually fired or retained in weird letters posted to Twitter by owners. I don't know why owners are doing that this year, but they're doing it, and it's very bizarre. So there are 5 openings this year. I think a lot of people expected more openings, but there's only 5. And they are New England Patriots, Chicago Bears, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New York Jets, and the New Orleans Saints. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to run down what I think are the best openings to the least desirable opening. So looking at everything, I think the best opening right now is the New England Patriots. Here you have Drake May, who might arguably be, along with Jayden Daniels and Bo Nix, the best quarterbacks coming out of that class. He showed a lot of promise this year, and I think he has a very good trajectory, even if the rest of the team is not all there completely. I do worry, however, anyone who steps into that role is going to be compared to Bill Belichick, without question. And they're going to be unfairly compared to how well they did because Patriots fans and that organization are spoiled. They most of them anyway, only know what they had during the Brady and Belichick years, and that was success. And clearly, Gerard Mayo could not hack it, in 1 year. And by the way, that whole situation is just bizarre. Kraft coming out saying he knowingly knew that he put Mayo in a losing situation and fired him anyway. It's a mess there. But I think overall, it's probably the best situation, cap wise, personnel, GM, owner.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, is that any different than the way that Kraft dismissed Belichick? I mean, he came out there and was just like, yeah, he made all these excuses about all the success and stuff that Belichick had, and was like, well, it's time to move on, and made it sound like it was his fault, which I think it's just Kraft's way of dealing with dismissing somebody. Is like, hey, no, we're firing because I screwed up. I'm sorry. It's not your fault you're getting fired. It's mine. And I mean, I understand that a little bit, to be fair. But from what I understand, is like potentially he may have lost the locker room, which was there was a lot of rumor of that.
There's rumors about him losing the locker room, and it didn't help when he threw his offensive coordinator under the bus at that press conference after I think they lost to Arizona. That didn't help. But from what I can gather, Gerard Mayo was always going to be the coach in waiting after Belichick retired. And so they gave Mayo a chance to see what he could do. But Kraft, and this is Kraft saying it, knowingly put him in a position for him not to succeed. And I don't think, all things considered, Mayo was their first choice. I think they wanted Mike Vrabel and may have wanted someone else. But because of Belichick, they wanted to honor his wish and give Mayo that shot. And actually, Vrabel is what a lot of people think who they're going to go after. I don't think they're going to go after Ben Johnson, Brian Flores, or anybody else. I think they have their sights set on Mike Vrabel. It would make a lot of sense. He was a part of the Pats. He didn't coach there, obviously. He was a player there. But he would be walking into probably the best scenario of any of the teams looking for a coach.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few teams that are gunning for him, because I saw like after that announcement came out, someone says, and now the Jets will do the funniest thing.
Oh, they'll do something else funny, and I'll get to that.
You
real
think
quick,
Rex, you think sexy Rexy's coming back?
Oh, we're gonna talk about that. Real quick, I'll just give you 2 and 3. I would say these are interchangeable, 2A, 2B. I have Chicago as my second best, and that's only because you have a young Caleb Williams there. I really like that offense that they have. Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Odunze, and Cole Kmet, one of the best tight ends, I think, in the league. My whole issue, of course, is there's friction right now with team president Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles, and the whole situation with Miss McCaskey, over 100 years old, not knowing if she's going to be around in the near term is definitely concerning. Also, the NFC North, you have 3 teams there that are absolute juggernauts. But I think if the right coach steps in and is allowed to develop Williams and build that offensive line, which is desperately needed, I think they'll be in good shape. Jaguars, or that 2B team, they're in the AFC South. I think that's a benefit for them outside of the Texans, which kind of had a sophomore slump this year, and we're not sure what the Colts are. They're very confusing, and the Titans are the Titans. They have, I guess, an okay roster. I'm concerned.
They got the easiest route to the playoffs. I mean, you take the Bengals, you throw them down there in place of Jacksonville, and we're going to playoffs.
I mean, they do. I mean, like I said, the AFC South is the Texans, who regressed, and everybody else, because we don't know what the Colts are, and the Titans are just poo-poo. They really are. But my biggest concern is Trevor Lawrence. He is not the generational talent that he was projected to be by all these scouts coming out of Clemson. He's regressed this year. I think a lot of people gave him the benefit of the doubt his first year because of the whole Urban Meyer issue. But we're into year 4 with Lawrence, I believe. and he hasn't really taken that next step to put him in that conversation of being a top 10 quarterback. And I think any coach coming in, that's concerning if you want to contend. I think the Jags are in a more of a win now situation as opposed to a win down the line scenario. I don't know though if they can necessarily contend right now with that roster. I think there's some holes there that they need to fill.
Big
Obviously,
holes. Big holes.
yeah, but they have some bright spots. Brian Thomas, Brian is it Brian Thomas Jr.? I think that's who it is.
I think that's right.
Yeah, amazing wide receiver. They hit a home run with that pick. But I don't think they're going to land Vrabel, excuse me. I see them more in the line going for someone like Mike McCarthy, maybe the Ravens OC. God forbid Matt Nagy if they're that desperate or stupid. But there's also, of course, the issue finishing up with Trent Baalke. And I don't know what dirt he has on Shad Khan, but it's one of the worst GMs in the league. And they decided to keep him over Doug Peterson. So that should tell you stuff. All right. The New York Jets, everybody's favorite meme team. Where to begin with the New York Jets? Well, Aaron Rodgers may or may not be back. And hopefully Aaron Rodgers is not back because I don't think he can play football anymore. I think he needs to retire.
I mean, they beat Miami.
Miami's awful, okay? And I will die on that hill. Miami is not a good team. And I am shocked they did not fire their GM. But that's neither here nor there. New York Jets.
I mean, we all know why Miami's bad. And unfortunately, it's CTE. And
listen, it ain't just that. That is a finesse.
Big part of it.
That is a finesse team that when it gets cold, they cannot play. Tua should not be playing quarterback. It's clear to me that Tyreek Hill is checked out. He wants out of Miami. He has publicly said so.
Yes. He wants to trade. In fact, the Patriots are currently looking to try and pick him up if they make a big move at quarterback.
Yeah. But the Jets, they have a great defense as always. Quentin Williams, Sauce Gardner. They have Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. But I don't know what it is with the Jets. It seems like they are snake bitten. They're a snake bitten franchise. It doesn't matter who's in at quarterback. They can't develop a quarterback. They have a Hall of Famer who clearly cannot play anymore. It's just a bad situation all around. They have not been good since Mark Sanchez was there. And if you know anything about Mark Sanchez, he was not a good quarterback. But that was the last time they were actually legitimately good. Which leads me to say they have interviewed a whole bunch of people, including Rex Ryan.
Sexy Rexy.
There is a quote from Endgame where Thanos is like, "You cannot live with your own failure." And where did that bring you? Back to me.
Right back to me.
Yes. So they're going back to Rex Ryan, potentially. We don't know. They might be desperate enough to do it. But they've interviewed, I actually had the list. So far they've interviewed Ron Rivera, Mike Vrabel, but they're supposedly interviewing Rex Ryan, Arthur Smith, Joe Brady, Jeff Ulbrich, who is their intern, Brian Flores, Josh McCown, Bobby Slowick, the Texans offensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, the Lions D coordinator, Vance Joseph, who was the former head coach of the Broncos, is now their defensive coordinator, Matt Nagy, and Brian Greasy. They're interviewing a lot of people. They are that desperate in Florham Park to win. They're in win now mode.
But they can't because it's the Jets.
It's a snake-bitten franchise. I don't know what it is about the Jets. There's just something there. I don't know if it's a culture issue. I don't know if it's an owner issue.
Well, even Brett Favre struggled with them.
He was too busy sending text messages to Jen Sturger to even focus on winning.
Allegedly.
Right? Sure, allegedly.
Sure. I got legal screaming in my ear right now. Allegedly.
But not only that, but they're in the search for they're also looking for a new GM as well. So, but they're not the worst opening, unfortunately. And this pains me to say, my favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, are the worst head coach opening in the NFL. I will try and keep this as brief and as safe for work as possible, so I don't crash out and say something that will get us in trouble.
Okay.
New Orleans Saints suck. They had a Linsanity run this year for two games. They went on a Linsanity run for 2 games where they looked unbeatable. They put up 90 points.
They did. Because I remember watching that and being like, man, Sai's got to be excited. Like, I can't wait to talk about this. This is going to be great. And then what happened, Sai?
I felt great. I was wearing my Saints cap around town, my Saints hoodie, getting all these compliments. Wheels fall off. Injuries pile up. It's just a mess. They don't know what they're doing in New Orleans. They are so screwed. It's not even funny because they have kicked the can down the road doing Luminomics with Mickey Loomis, their GM. They've kicked the can down the road to the point where they can't kick it anymore. The tab has come due. And the cap situation is abysmal in the next year. It is abysmal.
76 million in the hole?
It's more than that. I think it's
86?
over 100. I think it's over 100. It's something. It's big. Like it's embarrassingly big. Here it is. 63 million over the cap. So they're going to have to cut a lot of people. They're going to have to trade people and restructure.
Yep. I guess.
So,
but I mean, that's what they did last year. Because if you remember last year, it was like 74 million. So like they're actually in a better shape right now.
Oh, stop! Don't give me hope. Listen. That team is going to be garbage for at least 2 seasons. So, Saints fans, you're not getting Aaron Glenn. You are not getting Vrabel. You're not getting Ben Johnson. You're probably going to get some retread. You're probably going to get Matt Nagy. You probably get John Gruden. You might get David Shaw, if you remember him from Stanford. You're not getting a top-tier head coach. This is going to be a painful rebuild. And whoever coaches this team, Godspeed. Because it is a steaming pile of you-know-what, and it does not get better. It will not get better. This team might not win 3 games next year. That's how bad it's going to be.
Can I just have a small caveat there? Like, because you were talking about like injuries and stuff derailed you, and like, I mean, to be fair, I used the injury crutch many times when I was like, yeah, our defense sucks early on because we got all these injuries that popped up. But the thing that's taking me off is like Detroit is literally playing with a whole new freaking team on injury reserve.
Yes.
And that's still competitive. And like, I mean, granted, except for against the Bills. So like, I mean, I get that, but I don't think that every team that we played was the Bills, and I don't think every team that you played was the Bills. So how do they have the ability to have such a stocked back room as opposed to the 2 teams? I mean, I don't know. Maybe they've got money to spare on practice squad veterans and stuff. I don't know.
Well, it's 3 things. First off, they don't have Ochsner Health. Okay, if you're in New Orleans or Louisiana, you know what Ochsner is. They're the largest medical system in the entire state, and they also coincidentally work with the Pelicans, who are also a very injured-riddled team. They've only won 7 games this year. All right, so they both use the same medical service. It's weird how that works. Both teams are all injury-riddled, and they use the same training staff. Also,
but both teams also eat lots of gumbo. They're both like used to like climate weather.
Well, that's Zion. Zion is the one who eats the gumbo and doesn't clearly work out. It shows. But the Lions, what do they have? I don't care. I don't like Zion Williamson. He used to be traded too. Anyway, the Lions, what do they have? They have a strong culture. They have Dan freaking Campbell. They preach next man up. They go out and bite people's kneecaps. Who do the Saints have? A guy called the Rizzler as their interim quarterback, and Dennis Allen, one of the most spineless and useless pieces of garbage I have ever seen. From a football standpoint, he's a nice guy outside of football. But from a football standpoint, he's garbage. Okay? Just garbage. All right? There's no culture there. There's no next man up. There's no depth. Detroit Lions have drafted so well and have done so well in free agency. They have depth to spare. You notice how they can like sub players in and they still look good? That's because they did their homework when it comes to the draft. That's because they struck gold in free agency with depth signings. That's because they have the capital, the draft cap. No, not the draft capital. Excuse me. They have the free agency capital to go out and make those key signings. The Saints don't have that. They get everybody's hand me downs and stuff that people don't want anymore. And then they go out and expect to field a team that can compete for 17 games and are surprised when they can't compete. What do you think would happen when you can't pay quality depth players? Anyway.
Yeah, so I was getting ready to say, hey, Cy, like as much as I'm enjoying like dwelling in misery with you because as a Bengals fan, I mean, I had hope. I had hope last week, and you guys were just annoyed with how optimistic I was, and it's like, hey, there's a 0 chance in hell that this is going to happen. I said, but there's still a chance, and now I'm heartbroken, and I'm ready to watch some playoffs of other teams playing football, going, we could have beat that team. We could have beat that team.
You will.
But it is time for us to move on to our guest. So Finn, hopefully you haven't fallen asleep with us rambling about the pro sports and our boring drama with numbers and coach firings and things. And we're going to go down to the wonderful world of college football.
No, it was fun listening to you guys reminisce about, players who are professionals that have gone through, many of them, I think most of them have gone through the college level for at least a couple of years and are now playing for cities around the country and a lot of money. And, there's a certain level of formality that comes with that. By definition, these guys are all professionals. But then you come back down, you take it back down to the level where most of these players came from, down into the college level. And
I'm a big college fan, by the way. So just so you know, and I don't mean to interrupt you before you get going on what it sounds like you've got. Well, it sounds like you got a speech ready for us. But I did want to
have a speech. I was just saying that this level is where the fun is. And as someone who prefers this level over the pros, it has been a fun season and it has continued to be fun because the team that I am a big fan of, the Penn State Nittany Lions out of the Big Ten Conference, are not only still in the playoffs, but they're in the semifinals.
Yes, that was the one question I wanted to ask you before I turned you loose. Because, yes, I'm a huge fan of college ball because I talk about it all the time. Everyone knows that I'm obsessed with it as well because I think it's more fun. Now, NFL is more interesting because it's it's one of those things where literally one thing goes one way a couple of times in a season and all of a sudden you're in the Super Bowl. Where in college it's they're massive blowouts, right? But I had one really important question I wanted you to answer for me, if you don't mind, real quick before I am ready to go. All right. So, what is a Nittany Lion?
Oh, that is a good question and a fair question. So the technical definition of a Nittany Lion is that they're mountain lions. Back in the olden times of old America, mountain lions used to roam around what we now know as central Pennsylvania, and there were a lot more species of mountain lions around that time. And the large mountain in the middle of the state there, Mount Nittany, is where a lot of these mountain lions called their home. So they were colloquially named the Nittany Lions, being the mountain lions that hung around Mount Nittany. Now, those lions aren't really there anymore in any way, shape, or form, but back when the university was starting, they were still around and the name more or less stuck. So even though a lot of people shorten the name to, the Lions, the Penn State Lions, they are still technically mountain lions. The mascot is definitely still categorized in the mountain lion variety. But that's where the history of that name comes from.
Okay, so am I pronouncing that incorrectly then? So it's not the Nittany Lions, it's the Nittany?
Yes, there's
Lions?
that N. That N is definitely pronounced the Nittany Lions.
Okay, because like it seems like for every time that I run into someone that talks about them, they do the end sound silent. Okay, well that is super interesting, and I'm glad we got our we've checked our furry checkbox off today. So
Yes, I'm not
Animal lore.
I don't tell people this too loudly, but it was definitely a large factor in choosing what school I went to when I was choosing colleges. So,
Shameless.
oh, absolutely shameless.
But yeah, like I mean, because you guys are playing. Who you playing this week?
The
Notre
Fighting
Dame.
Irish from Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's right. So they're like the ACC but won't admit it team.
Yeah, Finn, I'm curious. Well, I'm curious to hear what you thought about the game last week. Before we talk about Notre Dame, just for a bit.
Which game?
On whose side?
The Boise State game.
Yeah.
Oh, so I thought that game was I think that game was a lot more interesting than a lot of people are giving it credit for. I think it actually a lot of things can be taken away from that game that can describe Penn State's season and describe their next game against Notre Dame, things that they need to really think about when they go up against that level of talent. Because the game plan was obvious from the first snap. Boise State has this guy named Ashton Genty, and he cannot be a factor. And I've watched this team for, I guess, coming up on 7 years now, and I've never seen the defense more targeted on one specific guy than Ashton Genty every time he touched a ball. And it was clear that that was the game plan from the beginning, and it more or less worked at a macro scale. Now, what I think is getting lost in the details is that I'm pretty sure Boise State knew that was going to be the call from the defense on the Nittany Lions side. And they actually did try to mix it up in terms of not only who was running the ball, but getting more involved in the air than I remember them needing to do in their regular season games that they've had. So they actually threw the ball a decent amount, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of short yardage, which makes sense because, you know, if you could move Genty could get you 3, 4, 5 yards. If you can continue to move the chains that way, you could stay in the game. He doesn't have to be, you know, the superhero again against this team. And I think that was the game plan going forward. And I think it was just a matter of after, you know, one of the things that you really see, you know, someone who watches a lot of college football, one of the biggest differences between like the elite teams and the not, you know, the teams that are good, but just not at that elite level is this idea of the war of attrition, where, you know, football games are long. And when your defense is out there for a long time, it is very obvious how tired they are around the third and the fourth quarter, just in terms of the miscues
They
and the
get
things
gassed.
that led up. Yeah, and I think what happened was, Boise State ran out of gas before
Yeah.
Penn State did. Penn State is one of the deepest teams that they've had in a long time, and, you know, all credit to the incredible season that Boise State had. But, you know, it was, you know, they had their guys, but once they were picked out as their guys and didn't really, you know, have that big of an impact, there was really no one else that they could turn to really have that X factor player. And I think
Yeah.
that at the end of the game is what really kind of put Penn State over not only that team, but, you know, the game in general. So, I mean, that's like the high level of how I think that game went.
Yeah. So, I mean, on top of that, do you think that also shakes the Franklin curse? Like, because he's won a big game now, right? So, like, is that monkey off his back?
I mean, personally, I think so. I think you just won 2 playoff games. I mean, what else are we asking for other than beating Ohio State and beating a national championship? So I think I think mentally the team and him has actually never been really bought into that. But I think a lot of people just, you know, long time Penn State fans who have been, you know, watching Franklin before I even got there, are starting to kind of put that aside and move on to, you know, what's the next thing that they really want out of him. And the next thing is basically what everyone wants is a national championship. And it's interesting, depending on how things shake out. I never want to count my chickens before they hatch, but there's an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, if two specific teams win in their next couple games. But I personally think that curse is now broken. I mean, even outside of the expanded playoffs, those teams were still playoff teams. They made the playoffs for a reason. So I am willing to say that the big game James narrative is starting to die down. Now it's going to be turned to the the big game against Ohio State narrative. I think the other thing that people are going to start looking at is underdog James Franklin, where especially this year, but just historically, Penn State has always beaten teams that they've been favored against. So they don't lose gimmies. Like, we looked at Notre Dame's loss against NIU earlier this season, which I actually
Right.
think is ignited them to where they are now. Actually, in a similar fashion, Ohio State's loss to Michigan, the way they're playing in the playoffs is still riding the pain off of that game. But, Penn State, even past couple seasons, really hasn't dropped a game that they weren't expected to drop. So now it's just a matter of, okay, when you play those elite teams and you go up against the teams that, the people down in Vegas and all the statistics are telling you shouldn't win, do you get over that hump? Can you actually
Yes.
play with the elites, or can you just hang around with them? I think that's the next big, question that the fan base is pretty much going to turn to. And I think that's something he cares about as well, as someone who, wants to win those big games in a conference like the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I mean, to be fair, you know, uh, uh, whether or not you can beat Ohio State, that's up there. But like, I mean, even because we covered it here, Ohio State struggled with Michigan, and they've continued to struggle with Michigan while still being what looks like a world beater this year. Like it's one of those things. It's like sometimes there's a team that's your kryptonite. I mean, I know that ACC football is probably beneath you, but the long running joke is the Pitt super weapon is that Pittsburgh, they're terrible. They're always terrible. But for whatever reason, if you're working on your perfect season, they're just going to pop up and go, "Hi, we're Pittsburgh. All those losses we've taken all year, they've been powering up something special. And here you go." Blah. And the Pitt super weapon fires, and you're like, "Well, crap."
Yeah, I
And
mean,
we're a broken team.
I'm not terribly superstitious, but as someone who's played sports and watches a lot of it, I subscribe to the idea of the kryptonite team, or the team that you just can't beat for whatever reason. And I think uh Ohio State just historically has been that team for Penn State. I think Michigan has been that team for Ohio State, going back into the near future, not so much in the far future. But I don't know. I guess for me, it's like that matters a little bit less now. Now that we have this, expanded college football playoffs, the beneficiary of the good team side is that you can survive a hit like that. And if you continue to take care of the rest of your business, you have a shot to, still make the playoffs and make some noise in the playoffs, and maybe even face the team again that you saw. I mean, we saw that with Oregon and Ohio State. Although I'm counting that game as an anomaly because Oregon just decided to hang out in beautiful Pasadena all day and forgot they had a football game on the same
Yeah.
day. But
What the heck was up with that?
I don't know, if I'm completely honest. It's just, some teams, because like, Ohio State is as elite as they are, but I was expecting that to be the game of the weekend, like by far, like the
I thought it was
first
going to be the
game.
game of the year. I mean,
Yeah,
like the first time when they met, it was so close.
Yeah, I still think that's the game of the regular season, that Oregon Ohio State game up in or actually for me, down in Eugene. And I thought this was going to be a repeat on a neutral stage, which I was really excited to see, but that did not come to fruition. And here we are.
By halftime, we were like, all right, well, see
Yep.
ya.
Yeah, I was like disappointed. I was like, oh, I was ready for. I mean, we had a great appetizer in ASU making things interesting with Texas, and I was like, oh, it's only going to get better from here. And then,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes that just happens.
All right. Well,
No, I was gonna
what,
say I know
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I know Notre Dame is slightly favored this week.
Yeah, I
Um,
think they're favored. Last I checked, they were favored
two and
by
a
a point and a
half.
half. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
then
it's
it's
2.5 now.
okay.
So the one thing that you'll learn about Notre Dame in playoffs, as someone who's watched them play in many playoffs, rooted against them every single time, Notre Dame has one or two playoff games. They will either win or there's going to be a blowout on either way. Like they will just get completely thrashed and embarrassed, or they will just show up and just be like, "We're the boss," and then afterwards, then they just get completely thrashed afterwards.
You're
So
reminding me of that BCS championship game, 42-14.
I was thinking the same
That
thing.
was that was the Manti Te'o year. Oh boy. Ugh.
yeah, and like they were forced down everyone's throats by ESPN. They
Yep.
spent all of that time, and it was like they don't deserve to be in there. No, there's a much better options out there. But by God, they were gonna force that through, and I don't know why, because it's not like ESPN gets any money for Notre Dame. But
No, it's NBC.
man, they were just after that for some reason.
You know
Um,
why? It was a good storyline, so you know exactly why that was forced down our throats.
It
Let's
wasn't
come on.
even a good storyline. It was just an annoying
It-
storyline, and
But it's
and
still sold. Like it was
no,
annoying, but
because
it's
they were
sold.
like that every year. Because for a long time, ESPN was courting Notre Dame because they wanted the Notre Dame contract, or they wanted at least to be part of like the ACC or the ABC family, and to get them away from that NBC contract. And so for a while there, what they did was they would just show up. They would just smooch all over that Irish booty, in hopes of getting some Irish booty, and it just didn't quite work out for them. And so then immediately they turned on them when they actually finally had him on the system. So, but it wasn't just the one; it was multiple BCSs that they were just embarrassed at.
Yeah, because they had no business being there, and that
No,
was also a flaw of the BCS. That for whatever reason, the BCS, the formula always overranked. They weighted Notre Dame way too friendly. I don't to this day I don't know why that was, but they were always put into situations in the BCS where you know
well,
they shouldn't have been there.
it goes down to Notre Dame's like not contract, their scheduling,
Yeah,
right?
strength of
Because
schedule.
like half their freaking schedule is like cream puff, but their legacy teams that we have a long-standing rivalry with Navy, and it's like, yeah, but like how often is Navy good? And then UCS was in their down year, and it was like they're bad, so why does this matter? I mean, yeah, they would play Michigan, but also that was during Michigan's disastrous like down year. I mean, technically the odds of all three of them being bad at the same time is kind of slim, but like there's a lot of that was really helping fluff up Notre Dame's like resume. The thing that really will expose them is whenever they have to play. Like I'm a Louisville fan, if you don't know, and when we play them, we will 100% expose them as being frauds. We did it last year. This year we played them close, and I think we had probably a better team than we did last year. So, uh, Notre Dame's going to be tough this year, I think, but I mean, that's just my 2 cents.
I mean, I've always felt Notre Dame has kind of been very overrated. I mean, even going back as far as Charlie Weiss. I mean, they were
Oh God,
Fiesta
yeah.
Bowl, Sugar Bowl appearances. And of course, with Brian Kelly there, outside of the whole national championship game, losing the Fiesta Bowl in 2015, then of course lower tier bowl appearances that they won. It's just I I've never really put stock in them as a legitimate contender for any national championship because of what I've seen. Like I know what I see when I look at them play every year, and I've never once thought that okay, this Notre Dame team could actually win the national championship. Like never. Even in 2013, I didn't think that. And that was of course in the midst of the whole Alabama, dynasty. It's like there was no way they were beating Alabama. I don't know why people thought they could. And as we saw, they got blown out. So I think do I think they'll win it all this year? No. Is Marcus Freeman a good coach though? Yeah, he is. Is Riley Leonard a decent enough quarterback? Yeah. Do I think they'll win it all? Hell no. Pardon my French. No, they won't win it all. It's Notre Dame. I think, and it sucks to say this because as a Maryland Terp fan, Penn State is unfortunately a rival of ours.
I think you mean
Rival's
quote,
very
unquote.
generous, but I'll let you
quote
continue.
unquote.
yeah.
Look, that's the media who has made us rivals, okay? Most Maryland fans do not consider you all our rival, but
I mean, you could at least go on with like the Maryland Derps, right? Like you got to throw that out there. Just try.
Oh God. Unfortunately, though, I do have to say, Penn State will probably win, and they'll win. I'll be nice and say that much. I won't say what I want to say after that, but
Okay.
they'll win.
All right. All right. So let's talk about like since there was realignment there. Now that Oregon's in the Big Ten, though, like shouldn't it just be Oregon versus Maryland? Like that should be your rival, right?
Oregon. Are
Yeah.
you serious? Oregon?
Yeah.
Oregon. Of
So-
all the teams in the
N-
Big Ten,
Yeah,
Oregon.
yeah, because you know why?
Why? Because they have Nike money and we have Under
Nike
Armour
money and you have Under Armour money right there. Like, come on, that writes itself, right? Am I
First
wrong?
of all, Kevin Plank wishes he had the amount of money that Phil Knight has. He wishes he had the cultural impact that Nike has had. Right? Kevin Plank is dollar store Phil Knight, and he will always be dollar store Phil Knight. Okay? And I mean that in a nice way. Maryland needs to have expectations. And unfortunately, our expectations are not that high and should not be that high. That being said, Oregon cannot be our rival in the Big Ten because they will obliterate us with all that fancy Nike money that they got. Have you seen what he does over there and all the investments he makes in Oregon? Like, it's insane. They have like some of the best training facilities on campus. Like,
I'm aware.
It's insane.
I just wanted to set
can't-
you off. That's all.
You're setting me off. Oh God.
Finn, did you? All right, I'm so sorry that we just got like distracted with harassing each other. Did you get everything you wanted to say in about Penn State? Like, do you think you got a shot at the title?
Do we have a shot? Definitely. It's not a clear shot. It is going to be very cloudy, and there are going to be a lot of big obstacles in the way to get there. And I'm kind of like on the same line as trying to be as unbiased as possible. I think
you can be biased here. I was screaming about our chances when we had 3% chance of making the playoff, and I thought it was a sure thing. You can 100% be a fan if you want.
Well, I mean, I think Penn State's going to win. I think Penn State has what it takes to win, and that is giving me a lot of comfort. My hotter take, actually, is I think whoever wins this game is going to win the national championship. As good as Ohio State is, I mean, I think their game against Texas is going to be a lot more interesting than people think. I think that game is going to go in an absolute shootout. And when games go into shootouts, it's one or two right or wrong decisions that could really turn the tide against a game like that. Where I think this Penn State Notre Dame game is actually going to be very ugly and very, classic Big Ten, old school ACC football. And I think the linear progression of both of these teams through not just the end of their seasons, but through the playoffs has set them up for success in a national championship setting than the roller coaster ride that Texas and Ohio State have been on in their recent games. Now, that's just me being an Ohio State hater, and I couldn't care less about Texas. I like Steve Sarkisian. I think he's a good coach. But that's actually my real hot take, that the national championship winner will be playing each other coming this Thursday. But hopefully that bodes well for the Nittany Lions.
That is a
But
take.
yeah,
like
that's my take.
That's
I
a
like it.
take. All right,
That's-
staying in the world of college athletics, we haven't gone over too badly based off of when my time clock. So I had two things that I wanted to cover real quick. First off, pulling back just a minute from, if I can keep the soapbox away from Cy for a little bit, toilet bowl that we did earlier in the year, because last year it was the teams that we wanted to see to play in the Super Bowl. We did like a little run where we provided color commentary. We recorded it. It was in Madden. It was Danny versus Seawolf, and we all had a wonderful time doing it. It was fun. Well, it ended up being the Bills versus the Lions, and right now, does that not look like what's getting ready to happen?
That's just from my perspective. I think that's the Super Bowl, but
I think it is too. And that was just like a joke thing that we did, because we had a Detroit fan and we had a Bills fan that was on here, and we were all really disappointed. So,
Yeah, I think Detroit's not a fluke this year. I think they have a shot to at least make the Super Bowl.
I think they have a shot to make the Super Bowl, but I don't think they'll have the shot to take it home if they're playing the Bills, based off the way that the Bills completely deconstructed them last time they played. But that's just me.
Oh no, well, going into that, I don't think this is going to be our Super Bowl matchup. And no, the Lions are too injured. They are too injured, and they're going to run into the Eagles. I truly believe. The Eagles are the only team in the NFC who can actually go and punch the Lions in the face. The Lions, their offense primarily runs through Jahmyr Gibbs, and when he's healthy, David Montgomery. They've already taken David Montgomery out of the equation. If the Eagles can stop Jahmyr Gibbs, that offense has to run through Jared Goff. And let's be honest, you were not going to ask Jared Goff to throw for 40 times a game. He threw 5 interceptions against the Jaguars. It's amazing how no one talks about that. It gets swept under the rug. But still, the Eagles are probably going to stop them. They have the offense to do it and the defense to do it as well. I truly think, and this is a very hot take, but I'm going to die on this hill, we're going to see the Chiefs back in the Super Bowl, and we're going to see the Eagles back in the Super Bowl as well. So it'll be a rematch of a couple years ago. And, do with that information what you will.
All right. Topic number 2, which I think this is what we're going to close out with. So the SEC, they're pretty awful this year, right? Because,
yeah,
Texas struggled with Iowa State, right? From the conference that they were too good to be a part of.
The SEC is just, they're a basketball conference now. Hot take, but the SEC is a basketball conference. You can pull up the viewers at home.
Disgusting.
It is. You can pull up the top 25 and 1 rankings. You will see a lot of SEC teams in the top 25.
To be fair, it's like last year. No. Because I'm cutting you off right now, because just like last year, ESPN is carrying a lot of water. Some of these teams.
Okay.
No, I don't want to discount that idea too much, though. I mean, if you look at what Alabama has been doing the last couple years in terms of how they've kind of led the charge of the SEC kind of, I guess, being back in the basketball conversation. And then if you look down the line, all of those teams are just, it's still early on, and basketball being what it is, we won't really get to know until, closer to late February,
March.
early March. But I mean, I'm just looking at a team like Clemson. We haven't heard that name in years in college basketball. Starting to make a little name for themselves down in the SEC. So I mean, I don't want to totally discount. Obviously, ESPN they love who they love, and they're gonna inflate the numbers that they need to in order to get the numbers that they need. But
Yeah.
I would not take an eye off of the SEC, particularly as we get into conference play. I think conference play is really going to show who in the SEC can compete at the national level, at the tournament level. But yeah, there's a lot of teams that are interesting to watch down in the SEC.
No, like Alabama out Calipari'd Alabama, or I'm sorry, out Calipari last year. Like that, and like he's a phenomenal coach. Like I think that what he's doing is he took Calipari's system, being able to get these like superstar players, and then getting them to actually play basketball well together, which was the one part that Calipari always had a hard time with. He could always get the superstars, and he would just be like, "Go play ball together," and he would just throw his hands up and be like, "Oh, well, I don't know. It's my dribble drive offense. I just tell them to go and score points, I guess."
Yeah. I mean, well, Calipari is. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, that's Calipari. Calipari is. We've had this discussion before. I've never been the biggest fan of him. I think he is good at, as you said, taking top tier talent and telling them to go play together and occasionally making adjustments. There's nothing there. That's all he's been good at, and that's probably why he's only won once at Kentucky. But Nate Oates has really turned that Alabama around in basketball. They've always been known, well, not always, but for most people, when you think of Alabama as a school, you think of their football team. You don't think of their basketball team. So he's definitely come in and changed the culture there. That's good to see. But the SEC is 7 teams in the top 25. Like freaking Vanderbilt's 13-1. I don't know who they've played, but they're 13-1. That's crazy for Vanderbilt basketball, I'm assuming. So I think the SEC has transitioned to a basketball conference. Football,
and
there's. Oh, go.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I said Clemson earlier, and I meant Auburn. I got my Orange Tigers mixed up, but it kind of just underscores your point of how, in my opinion, deep the SEC is in basketball this year.
Yeah, but like the whole point is about the SEC football dominance. I mean, we saw, Georgia make an exit. We saw Texas struggle. Like who all they've got left right now? It's just Texas. Everybody else bowed out. Like Tennessee goes up there and they're all beating their chest. They have plans to checker the shoe in Ohio, and they ended up. Yeah, there's a lot
The
of empty
fans showed
seats.
up.
Yeah, I mean they did, but like a lot of empty seats towards the end because Ohio State showed up and took care of business, and it's one of those things where they were searching for their next Alabama in terms of football, and the SEC doesn't quite have it. I mean, they've got Georgia, but you're not running into another situation where like 4 teams are going to magically show up that are all going to be playoff caliber teams. No matter how much ESPN wants to push that narrative, there are other teams that deserve to be in there. And they tried. Like they threw a hissy fit because they were saying that there weren't enough SEC teams in that want to restructure the way that the playoffs are calculated now. And that's what they're upset about. And it's like, are you sure? Because all that's going to do is you're just going to give somebody a cream puff win at this point. I had a big long rant early in the year, which was, if Vandy's good, the SEC is bad. Because it's not that Vandy magically got good; it's that the rest of the team started sucking. And if they're going bowling, then that should tell you right now that the SEC quality has dropped.
I mean, as I said, Nick Saban would have never lost to Vanderbilt. It is a whole new era down in Tuscaloosa. the SEC is not. This is not your father's SEC. This is a whole different SEC. Like, and the more I think about it, I think you're right in your assertion. Name, image, and likeness, and all that. That's leveled the playing field because now the Big Ten, they can go pay their players. Big 12, the Pac-2 or whoever, they can all go pay their players now. It levels the field. Legally pay their players, obviously. It levels the field, and the SEC hasn't. They haven't. They're still trying to figure out. How do they move forward with that? And that's probably why you're seeing all these SEC teams not being able to compete outside of Texas, but that's a glorified Big 12 team, let's be honest. So it's really jarring to see, honestly, just how far the SEC has fallen in, I don't know, 2 years? How long has it been since NIL? 2-3 years? So
yeah, it's interesting because I agree with you, but I just look at it at the different frame of reference. Not so much that the SEC has had has fallen, but just the rest of the college football landscape has caught up with them for the exact same reasons that you've said.
They've come down because they can't be as stacked as they were. So like that talent's moving somewhere. Now I'm with you, Finn. Like I don't mean to cut you off. I'm gonna let you keep going. I am with you that I love the fact that stuff has moved on to other programs. My concern is that there's going to be a new SEC somewhere else, rather than like just let the college playoff or let the college football world have at least some form of parity. But I have a feeling that it's going to go into the haves and the have-nots again. It's just right now we're watching this shift, so there's a lot more parity, which is making college football a lot more fun. But go.
No, I don't really disagree with that either. I think the underbelly of NIL is exactly that. The haves are going to can now legally have more, and the have-nots are going to be legally hurting a lot more. I mean, even conference changes and expansion. I mean, the Big Ten has 20 teams in it, so it's not that they're competing with other conferences; they're just swallowing other teams from other conferences. Basically making them a de facto in the conversation of the best teams in the country. They just have a bunch of them. So it's the problems that we have kind of seen in the how quote unquote unbalanced the college football landscape has been is just spreading out throughout the entire country, and it's still kind of finding a place to rest as opposed to it all being down in the SEC. So it'll be interesting to see how it rests. It'll be interesting to see how the SEC teams respond. What they could do both legally and what have you. But yeah, I think that's what's made these last, I guess, 2-ish years kind of interesting. Both the NIL and both the college football playoff changing kind of around at the same time. Has had some interesting wrinkles into just how we perceive college football. Now, of course, the Final Four teams are, there's not really a surprise of them being there in terms of the talent level. So there's no TCU this year. But
I mean, to be fair, like I thought they deserved that. They don't deserve the hate for being there, but they deserve to get the chance to go.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that Cincinnati also deserved to be there the year that they made it in. It's just
No, they did.
when they expanded it out and gave other similar teams a chance to actually play in a bracket format, it kind of shook down. Now it's the first year of doing this, so I don't want to draw conclusions on the first iteration of this, but I just found it interesting that they expanded it and the better teams have still won, which is why I wanted ASU to win that game so bad. But
I mean, I had a comment. I don't know if it was during the show or if it was during the post show, but my comment last week was that the one thing that the SEC is getting ready to find out is that now that you guys have been championing that we should be able to pay the players because you guys kept getting caught paying them in greasy McDonald's bags, that all of a sudden Nike's got a lot more money than a used car salesman in Alabama. So it's going to be a thing where we need to come up, I think, with the cap system. Now the question is how do you keep the SEC from cheating once there is a cap system? Because they're going to.
I mean, that's the cat and mouse game that any opportunity when something you've been doing gets legalized and democratized. What's the next thing that you try and jump to get a fair or unfair advantage over the schools? But I think you're right. I think not just Nike, but just some of the locations that these places are in. I think uh, I don't. They have to actually do it, and it kind of matters and doesn't matter at the same time because they both joined the Big Ten. But there's a lot of money down in the Los Angeles area where some
Yep.
players might be thinking, "Hey, there's a lot of people with a lot of money down in LA, and I could get some playing time on a UCLA. I can get some playing time on a USC team." So I think that now that that's a part of the decision of where not only players go, but where they transfer to. Like I think your gripes with the cap system, I have gripes with the transfer portal because you're just bouncing all over the place. Um,
I
but
think they should be allowed to
Oh,
transfer.
they need to
They just need to move it.
figure that out, because I think what you're going to see, and this goes back to what was mentioned, is you're going to see a team of haves and have-nots. Essentially, this is going to become it's going to be like Major League Baseball, where you have your the major league team in your farm system. Well, who are the farm systems? The MAC, the SWAC, not the SWAC, the MAC, Conference USA, and then the major league teams are the SEC, Big Ten. That's what it's going to become like, and you're already seeing that with the whole transfer portal stuff. You got kids playing 1 year at NIU just so they can move on to UCL, not UCLA, USC, top programs like that. Transfer portal definitely needs to be regulated more. I find it very concerning that we're even thinking about salary caps in college sports. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against players getting paid. They need to be paid. They need to also have a union too. But we
Yep.
drift further from collegiate sports the more we talk about salary caps, you know, all this other stuff with it's paying players and all that. I think there's a way to do it without jeopardizing what collegiate sports originally were supposed to be. And I just worry that we are heading towards a direction where it's less student athlete and more so semi-professional sports league. And I don't think that gets discussed a lot. It gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. Uh, Unfortunately, we're running out of time. So I think we're going to wrap things up here. I mean, I agree with you that there should be a union. We should have a salary cap just to make sure that everything's fair. Everybody should be treated equally. But there also needs to be like reporting systems in place too. The transport port, like to me, the easiest way to fix the transfer portal is to have transfer compliant classes, so that like if you start, say you start a couple of classes, this way you can move it out. So instead of making everyone transfer before the bowl games, like you just start a couple of classes and they're just transfer classes, right? And they're the same in every school that's in the NCAA. So you can start those and you still get your credits for them, whatever it is. It could be English 101, it could be math 102, whatever it is. But they have the exact same curriculum and they transfer the exact same way. So if you left that school in, say, February, you could, boom, pop over to your new school the next week over, and you've just missed a week of school. It's okay. It's fine. Here's your catch-up time during spring break, and you're done. I think that's the best way to handle it, because this whole like transferring people, like completely depleting teams right before they get into like some of the most important games of their year, it kind of sucks. But that's just a mascot perspective, I guess.
As the Colorado fan being the king of the transfer portal, I can't comment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you benefit from it, but also
Yeah.
you lose a lot of talent for it too.
I mean, we'll see.
We have.
Things are gonna. We'll see how they manage now that they got all their players. They had their run with the 2 stars as 2 sons. So we'll see what they do coming forward.
I mean, it'll be fun. It'll still be the prime time show. So, all right, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in, and please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Have a good
Bye.
night.
Fun.